I've waited for this day. The day that I can talk about the worst movie I've ever seen and that no one else will. Because I had to work on it. That's why. And I'm not probably going to be looking at the camera too much. I'm probably going to be looking at my monitor because I have written down everything I could remember just off the top of my head about this fucking movie. I have a rough edit of this movie, and I will explain in a minute entirely what all this is about. But I have a rough edit of this movie on my computer because I worked on it, and today it got released to a shitty little cinema in Rochdale. And I feel sorry for anyone who has to watch that movie because I will tell you everything I can. I will tell you every little detail about this movie and explain why it is certainly the worst movie I have ever seen, and I think the worst movie ever. Which I admit, stiff competition. Because you've got things like Birdemic, you've got things like The Room, you've got things like Plan 9 from Outer Space, many movies. You got The Conqueror, where John Wayne played Genghis Khan, and everyone got cancer, and it's really, really depressing. It's a weird movie. But the reason I say this movie is the worst, just the pinnacle of shit, is because unlike all those other movies, unlike every one of them, at least those people had talent. At least those people could construct a narrative. At least those people knew how to, I'd say this loosely, act. Well, they did in the Conqueror. They knew how to act, but all the other ones, it's up to debate. At least they knew how to put stuff together. And even though, weirdly, The Room, for some reason, had that whole green screening on top of a rooftop thing, which I will never understand. I really ought to get the Disaster Artist book and see if he explains that one, because that's an interesting one. But I'll start from the beginning. That's what I'll do. I'll start from the beginning. I was at university, and recently finished university, and I'm currently looking for jobs, as a person does. And also making these videos, and just generally wasting my own time. And during my third year of university, I had to find a job. We all did. We had to find work experience. Some people got it very quickly. Some people didn't get it until much later in the year. I, however, got it quite quickly because I used a website that had a listing of all these different sort of film jobs around Manchester, which is where I live. Well, close to. And basically, I found two of them. There were two. One was for, I think it was for a cinematographer. I think for a cameraman. But I can't remember. And I applied for that. Didn't hear anything back. The other one, however, was for an editor. And so I applied. I thought, okay, good, fine. I'm good at editing. It's one of the few things I actually believe I'm good at. That being the other one being writing. Although, of course, for anyone who's watched my show, not comedy. I do realize at times I'm not great at comedy. And I do try to be funny. I'm sure people do find some of my stuff funny, but I don't see myself as a great comedy writer. I see myself as a good writer for other stuff, for action and sort of adventure ones, but not comedy. And basically, the guy liked the fact that, one, I lived close by, I had my own editing suite, which if you've watched my show, you've seen. And so I went round, talked to him, and found out about this movie. And now I've got here on this list all these notes, all these different little issues with the movie, things that, as a person who was who's at university and learning how to make movies and was making movies and reviews movies online, with what few I do, this was a giant middle finger to me. This is what the problem was. The problem was the fact that he didn't get it after a while. It was obvious that he didn't understand what my problems were, and that I'm sure other people have had this situation. You're trying to talk rationally to somebody. You're trying to explain exactly why you think whatever they're doing is wrong, but they don't hear it. They don't see it, and they are living in their own little delusional world that blocks it from everybody, unless somebody says it's good. I don't see myself like that. I look at the bad comments on YouTube videos as much as I do the good comments, and occasionally, I get ones that have no impact, and thus I get rid of them. Some do. Some have impacts, or some have something where I have to state a case, and I've done that, and it's what I do. But the opening, as I've said, the opening lies were as such. One, he said it was going to have a Bollywood influence. Couldn't see the Bollywood influence, didn't really have the Bollywood influence after a while. Had stuff what I think was meant to come close, but we'll get to that. The other one was that the film's original plot, and I say original because that's the more interesting part of this story. The film's original plot was supposed to be, he told me, and there's going to be a lot of he told me. There's a lot of that phrase in the story. The original story was meant to be 4 different versions of Romeo and Juliet, which I found interesting. And the 4 different versions were going to come from different countries. So one would be from here in England, one would be one from... I can't remember. I think it was from sort of like India, another sort of Pakistan area, maybe stuff like that. Different places, 4 different tales, all sharing a very similar theme of romance, of love, and tragedy at the end, possibly as well. I cannot remember. And trust me, after a while, this doesn't even matter anyway. Sorry, I have a bit of a cold. I'm telling this story, which is the worst thing. So it didn't matter. So I was like, okay, interesting. It's not really my forte. I'm not a big fan of romance films. I do generally tend to dislike them. But I thought, doesn't matter. I will do my best. I'm nothing but professional when it comes to this sort of stuff. I will work on it. I will try and make it as best I can, and I will try to make it the best I possibly can because I want to do a good job. And so that's how my mindset was. I should have been worried from the start, I often say now. I often when I think about it. Because this guy was still filming on digital tape. And I ended up with about 20 different videotapes, which... I was trying to think if I had one in the drawer. I don't. I think there's one in my drawer in my room. Because this isn't my room. It's spare room. It's where my computer lives and some of my other stuff. It's my old room, which is why I was very happy about. But basically, one of the first things he gave me this little grey box thing, which was obviously a camera at some point. I think some point in the 60s, maybe. I wasn't too sure. And we tried to connect that up, and that was supposed to read the footage off it. It didn't work, so I ended up with a fucking VCR player that had the ability to watch these tapes on my desk. And you can actually even know, if you go back to some of my older videos on Dailymotion, where the camera was over there, and it would point to here, you can see it in the background. You can see it sat behind me, and there's a period of probably about 6 months, because that's how long I worked on it, where there's this VCR player sat behind me with a bunch of tapes next to it, and that was when I was doing this work. It then disappears. It's just they moved it, and they had to give it back to him eventually. But basically, so he gave me these tapes, and that was the first thing away because I had been working at university with digital, video cameras with memory cards and that sort of stuff. Like even my own camera, even the camera I'm recording this with. Although the camera I'm using to record, because actually what's recording it is Wirecast. The camera that I use was an SD camera, and I probably could have got better footage with this camera than he did with his. That is actually how I think, and his was at some point a professional camera. I don't know when. Once again, probably 80s. It was old. It looked old. So that was the first problem, and I went through the stuff, and you're in a very unique position as an editor. You're in a very, very unique position. I loved the fact I was in this position. Because you get to watch these tapes as they're playing. You get to see these clips. And generally it's out of context. So, and everything. But you begin to wonder what this film is. And you begin to piece it together. You begin, because of the way I had to record it, I had to leave it running. So a lot of the time I would be sat here reading or doing other stuff and watching these tapes go through and looking at the scenes and seeing what was going on. And after a while, something began to be rather obvious. The film made no sense. And I'll get to it. I'll get to it slowly. I'll tell you, I will go through it piece by piece. And trust me, every piece is fucking golden in hilarity. Because Once again, this is the worst film in the world. It is literally awful. I couldn't explain how awful it is easily. It had to be this sort of video. It had to be this long, rambling, I'm sure, video, because I have to explain it. So, watching all these tapes, I then got this list. It was a big long list of sort of these. This is where this scene is. Put this out, and I began to construct it. Now, an interesting thing between editors and directors is there is a dialogue, or there should be a dialogue. If you're going to edit for somebody, or if you're a director and you've got someone editing, you need to know this. You need to understand this. If your editor thinks differently than you do, which should be the case, because trust me, better films are made with differing opinions. They really are. Good films are made because people looked, and because people thought about it, and they constructed it, and that is the point. There's a great tale about Quentin Tarantino was working with his editor, who'd always worked with, and he had a version of the film. He had a version of the scene played out, and the editor did, and he went with the editor's version because it worked better. I'm not saying that that's me in this situation. The problem became, quite quickly, that he had pre-edited everything. He knew exactly how he wanted it to be. He knew he wanted it to be like this. He knew he wanted it to be like this. He knew that this scene should run on for this long. This should run on for this long. And after a while, it became obvious that he didn't know how to do this properly. And once again, I was going through university. I was in a third year of university. I felt fairly confident that I had the knowledge, that I knew what to do. I knew how to go about it. And I had my own experiences watching terrible movies. Because after a while, once you've watched enough Avatar: The Last Airbenders and Dragon Ball Evolutions, you begin to pick up on the things that go wrong in movies. So when he began to say to leave a clip running long when it had no point, that's when I began to question this. I began to say this to him. And here's another point for this entire story. If your editor tells you that he or she thinks that the scene is running too long, maybe it's running too long. Because that was the problem with a lot of these scenes. Some of these scenes, they ran on. He had a scene of of the villain, and I say villain in that with the bunny quotes, with the air quotes, because that needs to be. I'll get to that. It's difficult. I gotta work through it piece by piece. But the problem was that he had this antagonist walking up and just kept walking. It was like watching the film Jerry. It was dull. It had nothing to do with anything. There was no point to it. And I actually realised later that you could have just stripped out that scene entirely because it added nothing to it. And this became a problem. I began to notice that he had no interest in what my input was a lot of the time. There was one moment where I actually managed to get him to agree that how I'd set up a scene made better sense than his. But every other time, it was nothing. And I get it. I get how I sound. I am not deaf to how I sound in this. I get that it sounds like I wasn't being listened to, I wasn't being paid attention to, and that's what my problem was. And that's not the problem. The problem was never that. The problem was not that I was, well, okay, it was at the same time. It's like when I say about why I don't like the film Kick-Ass. It's because, and people go, oh, well, I bet you didn't like it because it's not like the comic. And I go, yes, but that's the base of the problem. It's the foundation of the issue of why I don't like that movie. My actual points for why I don't like the movie are then set up. They're set up from that point. And trust me, it took me 2 fucking years to make sure I got that phrase correct. Because every time I tried to explain to somebody why I didn't like that movie, I said, oh, I bet you didn't like it because it wasn't like the comic. And I go, yeah, that's the point. That's why I don't like it. But then it's because of these things that they took from the comic. I ought to do a video about it. That. Because I have my reasons. I get the movie's good. I get other people like it. I don't. I'm not judging anybody for liking the movie. But the problem became that I was trying so hard to try and make this movie better. Because I began to see the cracks. I began to see the obvious flaws in the movie that this guy was just so blind to. And I get it. It's his baby. It's his thing. And thus you will be blind to it. I've had that. I've written stuff. I've written comedy scripts where I've gone, oh yeah, shit, that doesn't. I could have done this. I could have extended this thought out. It would have been better. I've written scripts where I've completely missed the fact that something hasn't been put in. It's it's a thing you do. That's why you have an outside assistance. You have a secondary person looking at this stuff because it helps. And I would always say, if you're writing a script, get other people to look at it. They will spot what you don't. They will spot the holes. I don't know why they spot the holes. They just do. It's the way it works. But this guy just, it's a quote a certain line for a video game. This guy, it's unfucking believable. To quote, I know the game's Ripper, and I can't remember the actor's name. Fucking hell. Christopher Walken. Christopher Walken's line. This guy's fucking believable. But he just didn't get it. He didn't understand it. He refused to listen to any complaints I had. And every time... I wanted this to be a good movie. I was trying. And if I really wasn't trying, I would have just quit straight away. I only had to work for this guy essentially for 60 hours, technically, overall. And I plotted my time. I counted it out. I knew when I'd worked 60 hours. But I didn't stop. I kept going because I had hoped that maybe, just maybe, he would see it. That maybe he would sit and look at it and understand what I was saying, but to no avail. And the great thing was, this is my moment of validation. This is the moment that I realized, holy shit, it's not being me. It's not me being picky. He actually is a bad filmmaker. Is that he showed a film at my university, and I was supposed to go to it. I didn't. There's reasons behind it. That's a whole story. And basically, apparently one of my tutors, not going to say who, not dropping them in the soup. I'm not dropping this guy in the soup, so I'm not dropping them in the soup. One of my tutors went to it, along with a fair few other people I had for university. And apparently they watched it. I don't think he's going to watch this, and even if he does, that's not really going to help, because I had like 4 different female tutors during university, so that's not going to do much. They watched the movie, and they didn't like it. They thought it was bad. And when I asked them about it later on, this was 2 years later. They said to me, he doesn't know how to make a movie. He doesn't understand how to make a movie. And thus I felt validated by my thoughts. I wasn't being picky. I wasn't being insane. I wasn't just being my general critical self. He didn't know how to do this. So because of that, I was picking that up. I knew how to do it. I knew to a basic degree. I'm not saying I'm any great filmmaker, but I'm saying I understand the basics. I understood where he was wrong, and I could see it, and I could pinpoint it, and I was trying to pluck it out. I guess I ought to really explain what this film is about. What this film is actually about. Because remember I told you, the film was told to me as it was meant to be Romeo and Juliet. It was not. The closest to Romeo and Juliet that film got was the fact the main characters were called Romeo and Juliet. And Romeo wasn't even the guy's name. It was actually it was his nickname. And that was it. That was the closest they got. They weren't from warring families. They weren't in any way social. Neither of them die at the end. So, certainly not Romeo and Juliet. I mean, hell, I think... Yeah, I can think of better movies that have done the Romeo and Juliet thing that probably have made more sense. I think Nomeo and Juliet probably made more sense to being a Romeo and Juliet movie. It's fucking Nomeo and Juliet, for fuck's sake. But no, the movie, what it actually was about was 2 movies. And I say 2 movies because midway through editing, he said, oh yeah, we're sticking this other movie onto it to extend it out. And this is because they had the same actors in it. So thus, everything came together. Of course, nothing came together because neither one of the 2 movies made any fucking sense. That was the problem. So you have 2 movies. One of them was a revenge movie. The other one, a romantic comedy. Now, if you can imagine 2 movies that don't make much sense on their own being crammed together like some sort of bizarre genre chimera, then what are you going to get? You're going to get nothing. You were good. Actually, you think about it. You think about the Chimera analogy. You're gonna get that dog from the beginning of Full Metal Alchemist, the one who explodes. That's what you got. You got the resulting explosion. That scene is sad. Depressed everybody by bringing that up, if they know the reference. But that was the issue. These two movies, they didn't work. The romantic comedy one had these 4 different couples. They never really interacted, and the times they did, there was no dialogue between them, which was confusing. And the revenge one sort of had a coherent plot. It was the main character who was the director, so I'll get onto that. And it was him going after these bad guys who, these 6 gangsters. Well, 7, because it was the boss as well. Now, I'm going to do 2 things. I'm going to describe each one a little better, and let's see if you catch up quickly before I say the answer to this. Because both films sound very similar to another movie. Well, both of them sound similar to 2 separate movies, both made by the same director, and made fairly close to each other. Probably 1 film in between them in his filmography, I think. Probably about. Yeah, it's probably about maybe 1 or 2. I think I don't know his filmography perfectly. So the revenge one. The revenge one has a guy being attacked by a group. They leave him for dead, or what appears to be dead. And I will state that the it's not gender to gender. So the hero, and this will help you. The hero in the movie I'm talking about is not the same gender as in this guy's movie. So the hero is seeking revenge on these people who tried to murder them. He hunts them down one by one, killing them off in... I can't even say, like... It's not a fight. I'll explain each fight to you, but they're not fights. They're idiocy. He then mass kills off 3 of them. So I was pop up my computer and it's confused the fuck out of me. That's confusing. So he mass kills 3 of them. Okay, so let's still have him flashing. It's confusing me there. He mass kills two of them and lets the 3rd one go. Because that's Romeo. That's the Juliet character. It has nothing to do with the movie after a point. And then fights the final boss. He wins. And he walks off. He heads off into the sunset. Now, I'll admit, yeah, you might get it, you might not. I don't know. The first one, that film, Kill Bill. The entire side of that revenge movie is shaped like Kill Bill. I fucking mean it. Everything about it stinks of it. And this is from a person who has no sense of smell. It stinks of it being Kill Bill. Everything about it is Kill Bill. The fact that he's surrounded by them at the beginning and they're all sort of glaring down at him. The fact that they leave him for dead but he doesn't actually die. Although it's not explained how he doesn't die, which is confusing. In the original script, an angel comes down and saves him. Yeah, I don't fucking know what the hell that was about, but that's the fuck. Oops. And then but he goes after them one by one, and every time he finds one, it flashes back to them, and he kills them, and it continues. It is so like fucking Kill Bill, I couldn't believe it. Whereas the other one, the other movie, is tons of different little stories, about 5 or 6 different stories, being told. None of them are linear in sequence. So you get little snippets, little pieces, little bits back and forth. And it ends very oddly connected. You don't quite know where the beginning comes to the end. So yes, the other film is Pulp Fiction. Both Tarantino movies. But here's the problem. If you're going to rip off 2 Tarantino movies, you want to do it well. Because these movies are just painful. So I'll start with the gangster movie. I'll start with the one he described as a gangster movie. It's not a fucking gangster movie. Mainly because they're not gangsters. Well, they don't appear to be. And neither is he. So basically, the revenge movie. It's a fucking revenge movie. He kills... The way he kills each one of them doesn't... It's not like it has any connection to them. It's not that he sort of overpowers them or defeats them. Because, you know, in Kill Bill, she has to go. She has to fight each one of them, and she managed to defeat them. Except for the second film, where she just yanks Ellie Driver's eyeball out. And that scene is awesome. Or she fights her way out of a coffin. That also scene is awesome. All he does is one guy he just appears to stab, although doesn't look like he's been stabbed in the movie, which makes it confusing. Another one he just apparently strangles in the middle of a park. I don't know how he's gotten the guy there, but he does. And also it doesn't look at all like strangling. And what's weird is the guy's hands are tied like that. He could easily get his hands like that around the hero's throat and stop him or attack him at least. Doesn't do that at all. What he does do is he looks like he's been electrocuted because he just wiggles his legs. It's hilarious. It's fucking hilarious. Because his legs just go like that. It's bizarre. I wish I could show you it. I really do. I really wish I could show you it. But I can't. It's not my show. And what's the best part of that is, at the end of it, it has this great thing. It's like, there's this scene in Con Air, where, I think Con Air, it's probably not Con Air, Point Break. I think it's Point Break. It's whatever movie they are watching in Hot Fuzz. It's the one I'm thinking of. He has the whole. It's kind of, I think it's Point Break. It's the firing the gun up in the air and shouting "ah." It's that when he's talking about that scene. This guy's movie has that scene, but just not with a gun. It had basically he kills this guy, and he sort of started sitting there looking at him. And it's obviously in the script. It's meant to be like screams. It's obviously, you know, a scream of pain and of rage, and the fact he's had to kill his friend, and it's so terrible. In the movie, the scream is literally, "Arrgh!" That's it. That's literally it. I've heard a better sort of angry scream from the mutant enemy outro clip at the end of every single Buffy the Vampire Slayer episode. That sounded more convincing as a arg sort of a sound than this guy's fucking performance. It's hilarious. It is so fucking unintentionally hilarious, but it's fantastic because it is. And so you continue on, and now this is one of the things I noticed in this movie, and it's very subjective, it's very questionable, and it's one of those moments where the more I look at it, the more I question it, the more I try to understand it. I think the guy's movie might have been accidentally, I don't know, it's entirely possible that this wasn't accidentally, but I'm really hoping it was. The guy's movie is a misogynistic movie. And I know we have that whole big thing at the moment about with the Gamergate stuff. I'm not touching it. But this movie doesn't treat women like people. It does not treat them like people. It treats them like two things. It treats them like objects, and it treats them like plot devices. It doesn't treat them as humans. It doesn't treat them as anything more than something pleasing to look at on the screen. And admittedly, if they're not pleasing to look at on screen, because two of them are unconventionally unattractive, so they're I'm going to say they are fat. I'm not saying fat people are not attractive, but I'm saying in the terms of this movie, they are the two people who are least likely to have the film looking at them directly. And that's the way this film works. Because there are several different scenes where there's close-ups of their ass, the three main characters, the three main female characters, who were obviously not picked for their acting talents. Trust me. Because one can't emote, the other was half Polish, so everything she says comes out like she's chewing, and the other one just couldn't act at all anyway. She was just... All three were awful. And they were obviously all picked for the same purpose, because physically they look attractive. That's it. And I have better proof of this, because partway through editing it, there were these images supposed to show of them in bikinis, and not in the film, like these pictures that had been taken, and they were supposed to be shown in connection with it. It was weird. It was old man with a camera around schoolgirls weird. That's what I mean. It was creepy. About 3 minutes away, I think I was, for editing someone's fetish. But this is the thing, that they were obviously not needed to the movie. They don't do anything. And when they do anything, it's not really anything important. But basically, these three female characters get cut off. Two of them are the main ones, and one's a character who only appears in three scenes. This is a constant problem in the movie. Characters only appeared for very few scenes, and it became ridiculous in this regard. You would have, characters who are supposed to have these vital stories. One has a whole fucking subplot be wrapped up at the end. She's only been seen 3 times before that. Twice before that in the movie, and both times she has no lines. How do you wrap up someone's subplot when they haven't been introduced? That's the problem. That's constantly the problem with this movie. And so it became this issue with that. Because these three girls, they get captured and killed because they're idiots. Not because they are idiots, because it's written like they're idiots. That's the problem. Because the first one who gets captured, the largest girl, a very large girl, she looks very pretty, she's very nice, she might be a wonderful actress. Unfortunately, movie does not give her the chance to act, because she has no lines. But basically, she gets captured by being put into a headlock, despite the fact she obviously has the size advantage on the fucking guy who captures her, and also at the time he captures her, is holding a lit cigarette. Now, forgive me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure from my, elementary science, that if you have a lit cigarette that's burning, jabbing it into somebody, generally going to make them let go of you. Just a thought. But she gets grabbed and gets pulled away, but it's obvious she's not being forced, she's just walking with him. And that's stupid as it is, because this then also happens in broad daylight, so, points for morons. And then the other two, who are the thinner, more obviously photogenic, thus get more in the movies roles, they get grabbed at the same time, but somehow two people cannot fight off this one guy who is doing nothing more than sort of holding them barely. It's stupid. It's idiotic. And then the three of them basically almost get poisoned by him. 2 of them get killed and die immediately from drinking something. You never see what he puts in the water. He gives them this water. They drink it for some reason, despite the fact that, he's got them tied up and he's trying to force it. I'm pretty sure if someone's trying to force a drink down my throat, I'm going to be like, well, fuck off, I'm not going to drink it. Kind of a thought. But he kills off 2 of them, then lets the third one go because that's the one who he's supposed to be in a relationship with, and so he can't kill her. They have too much emotional connection. They're in love. It's like, fuck off. They're not in fucking love. The best part, is that it kind of shows how his scripting and how his mind must work. Because the character that he's playing, the director, who was also the writer, so yeah, this is sounding a bit like The Room at a point, brings in this tray of drinks, and you think, oh, he's just going to let them drink them, and that's how it's going to be. No, he brings in 3 drinks, uses one to make each of the 3, almost all 3 drink, and die immediately. Why did he bring in 3 drinks? What the fuck's that about? Why, if you're going to poison these people, are you bringing in 3 different drinks for them? It makes no sense. It's a moron. And so they die. And the best one, because I said that everybody in this movie, the boss actually, I'm not upset about him, but I'll tell you in a minute. Everyone in this movie dies the same way. They die by being stupid. They die by the idiocy of the characters and the director and the writer. Because no one should die in these situations. It's not Saw. It's not a fucking bear trap on your head going to be set off in 60 seconds sort of situation where there's no way out unless you do what's being said. This is, hey, if I applied any sort of logic, I could get out of this situation. It's like having a bag put on your head but not sealed onto your head. All you have to do is go, look, I took the bag off. It's not threatening. Because the main reason why I say that the only way they die is through sheer stupidity. The only reason. Is because one character is chased through a park, for some reason decided to run up a set of stairs instead of continuing on the pathway that you can see he can run on because the camera's there, so thus they can't. He falls over, and the hero, and this is hero in the loosest of terms, stands over him with a baseball bat pointing it down in his face, and this guy could easily just punch the hero in the nuts. All it would take was a nut shot, and he would be fine and alive and then able to beat the shit out of him. Does he? No. He somehow ends up getting beaten up by him and tied to a tree. I don't know how he tied him to a tree. I don't know how that came out. I don't know how he had this fucking rope. And I don't know whether he beat him first, then tied him to a tree, which would be pretty difficult, or if he tied him to the tree first and then beat him, which would also be difficult, because that means the guy stood there waiting like this. That would be it. So either way, it doesn't make any sense. But admittedly, the finale of the movie, and I've never seen a complete anticlimax like this before, because this is truly just the shit. Like, you like in Kill Bill, they have that whole thing. There's that whole battle. There's that whole thing. They're having that conversation. They fight, and she kills him with the 5-finger palm technique. That's how she does it. She kills him with this technique that even he wasn't taught, and that she has become the better person now. She is the master of this technique, and that's interesting because it has this point where it's, he's killed her. She is showing she is far more powerful. She is better. She is stronger, and that they should never have crossed her. They should have just left her alone, and everything would have been fine. They could have lived. Here, he tracks down the boss, who apparently is in a forest. I don't know. Is also apparently shirtless other than a vest. I don't know. And finally, their battle consists of 2 things. One is grappling like school children. And by grappling, I don't mean sort of like grabbing onto each other. I mean their hands are linked like that, and they begin to push. That's it. Your final fight of the movie is 2 guys pushing at each other. It's one electronic soundtrack away from becoming a gay porn. It really is. Because all that happens to the boss is he gets pushed over. Once again, going back to like a fucking child. He gets pushed over. That apparently either knocks him out or kills him outright. And then he basically just sort of does something to him, which I think is meant to be stabbing him. Because it cuts, he's got all this blood on his face, and then the hero drags the body away to bury it in the middle of a cemetery. All of this in the middle of the day. It's not like it's at night. It's not this sort of climactic, no one will know if who dies out here. No one will ever realize, no one will see it. It's, no, you're standing in a park in the middle of a day. How does no one fucking notice? And it's impossible to point to stuff like that. That's just how that part ends. At the end of it, he just walks off. He walks off, and then apparently, according to the script, at least at the time when I was working on it, it says that the guy was captured by the police a few days later. It's like, how did they not find him in seconds? He's walking around, leaving obvious evidence everywhere. He's not being subtle. And this isn't Taken. Again, in Taken, Liam Neeson, yeah, he doesn't need to be subtle. He's going after them. He wants to find them, and he wants them to know he's finding them. It doesn't make any sense. And what's weird is, like, there's meant to be this whole romance between the Romeo and the Juliet character, which doesn't really do anything, because you don't get why there's supposed to be this romance. There's nothing there between them. And at one point, for no apparent reason, and this was what really this is one of the things that pissed me off. Other than the terrible plot and everything else. This is the thing that pissed me off. There's a rape scene in the movie. Yeah. However, it is the most PG rape scene I've ever seen. You could slot it into a kids' movie and nobody would know. Because there's no reason for this woman to be assaulted in this way. There's no reason for it other than look, she's a female, she's in danger. And given that she's supposed to be one of the 6 gangsters who attacked him at the beginning, this does make me question exactly who the hell she's supposed to be. Doesn't make any sense. And so she's raped. But basically, you've got one guy holding her arms, and the other guy is sort of holding her legs and moving his hands a little. It just looks like they're trying to forcefully undress her. It looks like she's just decided to put on a bad dress to a party and they're like, no, you must change. I'm wearing this. You'll clash. We can't wear the same thing. And it looks like that because it doesn't appear like they're doing anything to her. And the best thing is, it then becomes fucking Starsky and Hutch when he comes bursting to the hero, Roman comes to bursting through a set of boxes. Once again, making a growling noise. And the best thing about this entire scene, which makes it, there's so much stupid. There's stupid upon stupid upon stupid. It's stupid all the way down. Is that he lets them run off. They see this guy, still once again they outnumber him 2-1, so they could take him. You know, if you're gonna fucking rape someone, I'd be surprised you're not gonna try and attack somebody. You know, question that thought. And basically, they just run off, and so he goes over and he sort of picks up, and then it cuts, and these two guys are dead. That's it. So the scene is nothing more than an excuse to have her sort of be attacked because we need her to be attacked. Although he claimed it was so that it shows he's watching her and looking out for her. It was like, how? How did he know this was happening? Especially as it doesn't build, and that's an interesting thing about how this movie worked. And I say interesting in the worst way. Nothing occurs slowly. Nothing builds to itself. So, like Kill Bill, go back to Kill Bill every time we talk about this movie. In Kill Bill, the Orenishi fight, there's that build-up. It's constant. It's consistent. You have Uma Thurman's character is following her, and tracking behind her, and getting into the bar as she does, and getting into the bathroom when Orenishi's lawyer is there, and then it's building up, and then she fights the crazy 88, and then fights her. You know, there's that constant build-up that's slowly increasing and slowly going, and it's very atmospheric. This movie has no atmosphere. This movie is space. Science reference. Yay! No. And that's the thing. The movie is just... It's just, this thing happens, boom. This thing happens, boom. This thing happens, boom. There's no time. There's no connections. There's nothing to build up on itself. And then there's this whole thing where it's obvious that something is meant to have happened, but I'm not sure what. I'm not sure why either. Because it wasn't really explained. And another problem was that the guy who was making this movie is of trying to think of the actual background is. He speaks Urdu. It's that background. I can't connect it in my head. I can't think of where the actual background is. And that's because a lot of characters in the movie speak Urdu because there's a Asian population in Rochdale and where it's filmed. And a lot of the actors are that. So they speak Urdu. And the problem is when you've got to film in Urdu, unless you've got subtitles, and this is especially difficult if you're editing it because you don't have the subtitles, you don't know what's being said. And this became an issue because the villain gives this whole speech while the guys are conscious, so don't know. And so you don't know what's going on, and I didn't know what was going on, so how could I understand it? And the script didn't say what was going on because he didn't have an English translation. Did for other parts, but didn't for the beginning bit. So the most important scene, I didn't know what was going on. Which I imagine, although according to the detail, it's supposed to be that he explains why he hates him so much. So, you know, exposition straight away has been shoved down your throat. But admittedly, the romance subplot's no better. The romance, I say subplot. That's helpful. And I say subplot because there's basically 5 or 6 different couples in the film. Each one is supposed to have a story to themselves. And the movie, when I was working on it, was 2 hours, about 2 hours long. It's when I saw that it was being released, it's apparently cut down to 1 minute to an hour 40. So I don't know what he's removed. I have a guess of what he might have removed, but I don't know. It's whatever he's removed, it won't have made it better. It's just made it shorter. It's the way that works. But so the way that sort of happens, the events sort of go with the romance subplot with the other side, the Pulp Fiction side, is that basically each of these four couples is basically almost exactly the same because he doesn't write personalities, he just writes robots. That's about it. And he just continues. And so you've got this whole thing of his character, because the film must always focus on his character, because how dare it focus on other characters? It must focus on the one he's playing. His character is basically just, he meets this girl, they apparently have this fight, I don't know what it's about, they get mad about something, they get back together, and then nothing happens. That's it. There is another couple who is this fat guy who was probably one of the few competent actors, really, overall. I still say competent even in that one. But, and he's with the girl who sounds like she's got food in her mouth. I didn't know the names. That was another problem. I didn't know what the fuck they were called most times, so I had to just describe however I saw or heard them. And she was always the one who had food in her mouth. Well, she sounded like she had food in her mouth. She didn't. It was just her accent. But that was the one. And so, and basically they did the same thing as some of the other couples did. They went to play pool. There's sort of a shot of them being together. And then she gets killed by the main character, and her boyfriend doesn't give a shit. And you never see them again. That's it. That's how that goes. Then the third couple is, you see them once. They have an argument. They have a really stupid conversation that I will tell you about in a minute because it's fucking hilarious. And they get back together, and that's it. They are the one couple, they are the one of the few couples who I said you could cut entirely out of the movie, you would notice nothing. You would notice nothing was missing. Because they are never really seen, only the girl of that couple is seen on screen with the other characters. The guy is never seen on screen with any other character. He's only ever there with her, and it has no impact on the movie whatsoever. You could cut them out, everything would be fine, the movie would run shorter, and it would be better, because you wouldn't have this ridiculous couple that makes no sense. But they have a conversation, and it's the best conversation. I've got to, as much as I hate this movie, at the same time, I've got to love how stupid it is. That's the way it works with this. And basically, the stupid conversation is they are sat outside in what was obviously at some point a wet day, because the blanket they're on is got a big wet badge on it. Either that or someone wet themselves. Could be either one. And they have this whole conversation, and it's bizarre, and at one point, as they're talking, he suddenly says, "Do you like being a model?" I was just like, "What? What the fuck did that come from?" That's it. She just goes, "Do you like being a model?" I'm like, "What?" And then she's like, "Oh yeah, I love modeling." It is so brain dead. She's not emoting. He's barely emoting. Both characters are about as vapid as you can get. And he then says to her about, "Oh, well, why don't you stand up and so I can see how you look and how you model?" I'm like, that's creepy as fuck. It's kind of terrifying. I'm pretty sure he wants to wear her skin. That's kind of the level of creepy it gets to. And then you just have her do, she's like, "Oh, okay," and she does it. I was like, what? Why? But the best line in it, the best fucking thing is, this sort of, they're saying keep things to each other, and there's these ice pops, these ice lollies that are on the ground in between them, and she picks them. I can't remember if it's he or her picks them up. One of them does. This is like, "Oh, you're cool. That how cool they are." It says so, but it's also hot like you. He described an ice cream as hot. A treat that is literally frozen, or else it becomes a wet slush that you have to drink, described it as hot. It's not even a chat. I don't even know why they're saying it to each other, because they were already meant to be a couple. So I don't know why they're saying these things to each other. It's insane. But she said, saying someone's hot like an ice pop. I'm not even sure you've got fucking intelligence in your head if you're referring to something that is literally has the word ice in the name as hot. That'd be like saying the sun is cold like you. That's what it would be like. But let's say this block of wood is electric like you. That's what it is. You're adding a fucking adjective to something that doesn't have that property. It makes me think the guy who was writing it had no idea, and admittedly he didn't. He really doesn't. It's hilariously stupid. That's the thing. It is hilariously stupid. But they have this whole conversation, and they're just lying there, and it's like the modelling thing doesn't come back up. It's not connected. It's not the main character. Anything to do with the main character. It's just it's just there. She's obviously she's a model. She's obviously a model. She's not a model. Fuck off. But then you've got my favourite. You've got this script has a lot of issues. The script has a lot of issues, but the best issue is always the one when you find it. Always when you talk about it. The script has a hilarious issue where there's a couple and they want to head off to another country and they want to get married and all this stuff. And so the main guy, the guy in the couple is sort of, it's not actually prostitution. It's compensated dating. If you know there's a term in Japan. It's called compensated dating. And it's basically going out with somebody for money. It's an escort service. Essentially, he is acting like an escort. And so he's with this other woman, and they just sort of sit there. They don't do anything. So the whole idea of this couple with how they interact is that they hate each other, but they want the company. It's like, if you hate somebody, why would you want the company? Because this other person's supposed to be extraordinarily rich, so you managed to be able to get anybody, but they're just sitting there, which makes no sense. But this guy and this girl want to get married. She is not that. She's not the situation. This character who's only called the Posh Bird, because, why give female characters names? I don't know, so they can be people and have personalities? Never. But this guy and this girl who wants to leave the country, get married, they do. They somehow have enough money, and they just leave. But this same guy who leaves, and then there's a narration that says, from the main character, because the main character apparently just narrates everything, including backgrounds and personalities. So you never learn anything about these people, you are told it. Apparently you are not smart enough to understand the movie, so you must be told every detail of these characters. And so basically they leave, and the narration says and I never saw them again. I heard they were last caught banging on a beach in some faraway countries, blah, 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 blah. What's brilliant is, you remember how earlier I said about there was a character who got strangled and his legs wiggled, and that was it, and it looked more like Spillitrine? That's the same guy. The same guy who the main character, who's also the guy who's killed this guy, kills him, goes away, says he never sees him again, and he's banging in the country, but he manages to somehow kill the guy. And okay, I get the idea that you could say, well, maybe he was lying, maybe he was telling you that. It's like, but why does he come back? Why would he come back to England when he's supposedly happy and away from everything in this other country? There's no reason, there's no point to it, it doesn't make any sense. And that's the thing. And then this other couple, the Posh Bird character, is basically, you see her for 2 scenes. She doesn't speak in either of them, so you don't know anything about her. But at the end of the third scene you see her in, she's looking sad, sat against this wall, and this guy just appears and is like, I really like you, blah, 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 and they go off. So apparently, a subplot is set up, not really introduced, but that is tied up at the end and finished. There was no need for her in the fucking movie, other than for this one scene, which really doesn't make much sense when you think about it. And it's just insane. After a while, I kept watching this movie, I kept watching it over and over again, I became obsessed. I was trying to work it out. I was like, what is he even trying to do? What is he trying to go and say? There's no theme. There was nothing. And it became maddening. That's what it became. I became frustrated, annoyed, and angry all the time. I swear to God. It baffled me. It baffled me that anybody who had been to university, because this guy had, and he was doing stuff, could make something that just didn't make any sense. And it was mad. It was madness. It was one of the other bits. There's about 7 minutes worth of him singing. This guy, the director stuff. He's not a great singer, but he's also, for some parts of it, strumming at an untuned guitar. You ever thought fucking Ed Sheeran was bad? This guy is terrible. But man, it's just... Oh, it has no point to the movie. It just cuts. He's singing. We go away. It has nothing to do with the rest of the movie. It really doesn't. I think that was supposed to be the Bollywood influence, the singing bits, but the singing bits make no sense. They just, for some reason, sat in a room, which was actually a room at university, so they'll never let him film me there again, at my university, with... wearing the same, what appears to be the same pair of pants, which really confuses the crap out of me because they both wear these really bright red fluorescent fucking jeans. And he's just playing a guitar. And that's it. And it's madness. It's maddening. And that's what it is. It became more maddening. It became more ridiculous. Just... And actually one of the best bits is during... They'd gone up to the Lake District, which is... It's about an hour and a half's drive from here, from where I am. And it just seems like him sat lying down. He's sitting on the side of his lake and he's singing away. But the best part of it, and my favourite part of it, is the fact that after about 45 minutes, there is obviously a family close by who's been watching this, because you can hear a little girl start shouting in the background, "What you singing? What you You hear about 3 times. What's brilliant is he watched that clip and still said, "Yeah, leave it in." There's a person shouting from the background, and you want me to leave the clip in? Are you fucking insane? Probably he was. Probably that's the moral of the story. The guy's crazy. Maybe that's it. Just, he didn't get it. He didn't understand. At one point, he had a scene where he had a character take off a coat purposely between shots because of how it looked. It was like, continuity at all? You know, it's a thing in movies. It's kind of important. But it stops the illusion from breaking. You know, if I walk out this door and yet the camera then shows me ending up in fucking Disneyland, you're going to be kind of confused. That sort of situation. But just, it was insane. It was a terrible working situation. I'm just going down my list a bit. The sort of my notes. You know, when I go into cars, when you look at this stuff, when you talk about stuff, they mostly had no motivation for whatever they were doing. They were just there. I get the fact that one of the things he says was like, oh, he wants to be this sort of very voyeuristic, and he wants to be showing that they're just like everybody else. But you're not showing them like everybody else. You're just showing them being boring as fuck. If I don't want to watch people being boring as fuck, I can go into Manchester, sit down on a bench, and sit and watch people. That's it. And I wouldn't have to pay money to do it either. You know, the other thing I could do is I could walk off. I could go. I could do anything else. I don't want to sit and watch people doing nothing. If I want to do that, I'd watch Big Brother, and I fucking hate that show. And it's just madness. It was continuing to be madness because he didn't understand. Nothing. There was nothing that could get through his skull when it came to this stuff. Everything I tried to explain. Tried to do it. Tried to talk in film logic. Nothing. Just wouldn't listen. Refused to listen. Was constantly a problem with that fact. There was stuff like at one point he's going through these photos on his phone, and he sees these like 2 images which are earlier parts of the movie, or at least earlier parts in comparison, because it's fucking difficult to tell where one thing begins, one the other ends. And there's these 2 pictures. They're obviously taken either from a different screen, which I actually think they might have been, or they're taken on set. Because there's no way he could have taken them. And supposedly this was supposed to show that the bad guys can get to him at any point. Which doesn't make any sense, because I thought they'd left him for dead, so why would they be trying to get to him at any point? That's the first thing. But then when I asked him, I was like, well, that doesn't make any sense. How does he have his photos? Because it's not like it's a hallucination. It's hallucination. Perfect sense. That'd be fine. If he put the phone down, checked it again, it was a different picture entirely, you go, okay, right, so he's hallucinating. That's fine. The director's excuse, the reason, it's an independent movie. So that's why. It's an independent movie, and that's why that doesn't make sense. That doesn't work at all as a fucking defense. If you want to do it for comedy, fine. But if you're trying to be serious and you've got something and then you basically say, oh no, the reason that the thing doesn't make sense is because that's the style, then that doesn't work. Then you just throw it up your hands and saying like, oh, it doesn't matter what I do. It's independent, so that's fine. I've seen independent movies be really good. I've seen those things happen. I mean, fucking hell, Clerks was technically an independent movie when it was made. And that movie is good. That movie is really good. The other thing, it's got continuity and it makes sense. It was probably made for the same budget of this movie, actually. Sorry. Cold is not a good time to do having a slight cold is not a good time to do this. But then, one of the other problems I found out was that a large amount of the dialogue is improvised. So there was no script. There was no... Well, there was a script, but the script was bare bones at most. It described sort of what was going on in the scene, but it never did. They never had much dialogue. And so he left it to the actors to try and do stuff. And thus you had stuff... At one point, the male character, when him and his girlfriend are having an argument, one of these male characters, tries to fucking strangle her. He gets her, he does that, he goes for her throat, and she doesn't at all question that. It's like, if someone goes for your throat in the middle of an argument, you don't fucking date them. You call the cops. And then one of the other ones says, oh, she was forced to attack the main character, and that's why, and it wasn't her fault. It's like, well, you didn't show it. You seem perfectly fine walking in there and attacking a person with a toy sword, because that's what it was. At least I think it was. It didn't look very realistic. And that was just the problem. It just... Nothing made sense. There's dialogue that didn't make any connection to what was going on. And it's just... It was... Everything about the movie that was bad was bad. Everything that could be bad. The camera work was poor because it just most of the time didn't really have any sort of interest or action to it. I mean, energy to it. The actors were were pretty terrible. The fact that his 3 main female characters were all picked because of how they looked instead of how they could act is a shocking indictment to this guy. It really is. And then just the writing, like nothing made sense. The last line of the movie, the last line that you see on screen, because we can't show the climax, we have to tell you about it. Basically says the main character is arrested for these murders, then is in jail, and then it says at the end, he is currently believed to be blank. It doesn't say, it just says currently believed to be and stops. I asked this question to about 3 different people talking about the script. I asked it to my girlfriend, I asked it to my mum, I asked it to my brother. I asked the people who were closest to me at the time. I said, fill in the blank. Fill in the blank that obviously should go at the end of that sentence. And nobody could. I couldn't do it. Nobody could do it because that blank had nothing. There was nothing that would fit. It's like, it's couldn't believe he's dead. So why doesn't the movie say he's died? He's currently in Egypt. He's currently undergoing a male to female sex change. What? There's nothing to do at the end. There was nothing in that movie for it to say he is currently believed to be. Because either he was in jail and dead, so thus the movie should have said he's dead, or he's in jail and alive. So it was one of 2 things. He's either dead or alive, which thus makes him Schrodinger's hero. That's what that made him. But it just... And there were so many problems like that. There were so many issues, and that it became so evident, and every day I had to work on it. It was just such a mess. I would try to fix things, but anything I tried to fix, he'd come in and say, oh, no, you got to do... it's got to be, it's got to be. He didn't want me as an editor. What he wanted, and what he should have posted, was a Craigslist ad saying, need to use computer to move footage. That was it. Because I didn't feel like I was an editor. When I've made my own videos, and I've made a fair few, I've made different sort of narrative videos and made comedy videos, stuff like that. When I've made this, I felt like an editor. I've been editing, I get the time, I try and get the timings right, I try and get the design, the feel of it right. I try to get everything correct. But bugger me if I didn't feel like an editor on this, because everything was pre-edited. Or like the dialogue scenes were one singular static shot and did nothing. And so you got stuff like that. You'd have, everything like, oh, so it's this shot and then this shot and then this shot, and this is, this is it. And so there was nothing I could do. I couldn't try doing stuff. I couldn't say, okay, so we'll move from a wide shot to this close-up shot and then to this extreme close-up, stuff like that, and then back to the wide again, maybe stuff like that. Because you'd already picked it out. Somebody didn't want an editor, and I never felt like an editor working on it, and that became the problem. If you can't do the job you're supposed to be doing, then it becomes ridiculous. And that is really the issue. If you're bringing on an editor, make sure they have something to edit. If not, do it your fucking self. Because that was it for the most part. The most part, all I had to do, which admittedly, yeah, it does sound like a really easy job when I describe it, is basically watch through the footage, find which one wasn't the shittest, and put that in. That was it. That was about the extent of what I had to do for 6 months. And as an editor, that's really dull. I had more fun and more time building my own stuff and making my own show, because that became editing. That became something I could do. And it's just fucking ridiculous that this entire thing, he didn't get it. He didn't understand it. And it was madness. And what was brilliant was, there's a series of shots. There's 7 shots of this female character who's supposed to be the main character's sister, who gets this huge, and I mean huge, sort of expositional narrative at the beginning. This Romeo character is saying like, she doesn't have time for her friends because of school, and also she doesn't have time because of work, also, and she keeps saying it's like, seeing everything is shit, and she wishes to go to that, like, has nothing to do with anything. She's not the main character, so it has nothing to do with her. She leaves halfway through the movie, like fucking Alfred in The Dark Knight Rises, and thus there's no point to have this huge thing where she's saying about how she sees her life as being shit. And admittedly, it just sounds like angsty whining, because you're like, you get busy. It's what you do. You have life. You have things to do, but you make time for friends. You do go out and do stuff. You surely have time. You apparently, according to this scene, have time to sit in a park watching a bunch of men play bowls. Or bowls if you're in America. Or French bowls, depending on where you are. I don't know. I don't know every idiom. And thus it becomes that ridiculous thing. And yeah, she leaves partway through the movie with this car, which then reappears later. You just go, okay, well, fine. She's just there as a sounding board. She's not there as a character. She's there for the main character to go, I'm thinking of doing this. About it. And eventually, after about 6 months of this shit, about 6-7 months, I quit. Because that was all I could do. I gathered up my thoughts. I said, I can't work on this thing anymore. It's killing me to do it. Every time I had to work, there was one point when he came, he basically would come around here, we'd sit here, we'd edit, we'd go over it. So there was one point, I shut off my own brain. And I mean this quite literally. I shut off my brain, was working entirely on autopilot, so every time he said to cut something, I was just doing it. But unfortunately, I like to think. I am not a mindless drone. I am not a robot. How much I wish I was. Unfortunately, I have my own opinions and values, and thus, when I'm having to work on something that is so terrible that I wish to fix, that I can't fix because some twat has got control of it, I get annoyed. So I quit. That was what I did. Admittedly, it was the best fucking option, really. He couldn't do anything, he couldn't complain. He did, but he couldn't. Because I wasn't getting paid for it. This was unpaid work as well. This is the fucking, the great thing of the story. I'd have kept working if I was going to get paid for it. Didn't ever get fucking paid for it. This is fucking volunteer work. Volunteer work that was not work I was wanting to do after a while. And it just became ridiculous. So, one of the things I always say is that if you're not liking a project and you can quit, then do it. Don't work on something you don't want to work on. That was what we were told at university. Do not work on something you have no heart in. Because it's obvious. You won't enjoy it. The other people know you're not enjoying it, so there's no point. And that was what it became. You know, I've sent him a message. I said, I quit. I can't do it. I cannot work on this movie. And how the fuck he couldn't have told this? Because it was obvious I didn't want to work on it after a while. But the best part of this, the best part of the story is then will worry some people. Sure, was this. Because obviously I'd signed this contract, but this wasn't really actually really much of a contract. It was, you know, that sort of thing, and so on this other stuff. But basically, I sent him a message. I quit, and he rang up. He wrote he was trying to get me to work back onto it. Now, anyone who knows me in real life, and probably very few, I am a stubborn asshole when I want to be. If someone says something or does something that really, really pisses me off, and it has to be a very good point, it has to be a very fine spot to do it, because usually I'm 22. I've tried to calm that stuff down. I've tried to. If someone annoys me, I go, okay, fine. It's fine. Just doesn't matter. Let's continue. Not going to try and waste my time on it, which I find out obviously is ironic because of I created this video which is an hour and 10 minutes long currently, and I'm saying about how much this guy's pissed me off, and this is why. So he rings me up. And he's saying like, want you to keep doing it, it's like, I don't understand why you're quitting, which is the fact he didn't understand is fucking amazing. But I said to him, I don't want to work out anymore. It's obvious you have your ideas, I have my ideas, and I don't want to do it. I'm not enjoying what I'm doing. And this is when he said something. And now there's a phrase. There's a phrase that if you say it, you're gonna have to think of two facts. One, you better fucking back it up, because if you can't and you're just trying to use it to scare somebody, they're gonna be pissed. And two, if you expect somebody to work with you, if you expect them to continue, and you decide to say this phrase and decide to use this threat, you've got to think they're not gonna be too happy about you using the threat, because that phrase is, I will take you to court. He rang up after I said I wanted to quit and said he would take me to court for trying to get out of doing this movie. My reaction, as you can guess, was not one of the happy bunny variety. My reaction was to shout loudly at him, tell him to go fuck himself, and that I was half tempted to delete his movie just for having said that to me. Because here's the thing, I don't scare when it comes to that situation. I do not scare when it comes to those situations, because I am an asshole. And sometimes being an asshole really works in that situation, because people will, in America, I know apparently a lot of people tend to sue people. It's kind of insane. And some people sue for things that is entirely their fault, but they want to blame other people. It's insane. We do it here as well. Not as much from stories I've heard, but still. So when he said that, it was just literally, fucking bring it. Because I knew, even if he tried, I could explain exactly why that movie I was not working on the movie I was told. I had, in my head, I had legal basis. He said I was going to be working on this movie. It was obviously not. I didn't get to work. I wasn't editing the movie. I was being told what to do by somebody else. I had no input and no value to the movie. He could do it entirely himself. He didn't need me there. There was no specialist skills being used. And of course, if you're going to say that to somebody, they're not going to fucking work with you afterwards. That was how that worked. He said it. I just quit. I just gave up. I was like, no, I can't be convinced. So later, when he came around to get the footage and stuff, because that was a whole fucking palaver. This is another problem they had. He was constantly late. He was late. He didn't, and if he said he was going to do something, he didn't do it. He constantly said about stuff like that. He would send me messages at ridiculous times because he worked at ridiculous times. So he'd send me messages like 1 a.m, replying back to me. He had all day to reply, and I'm sure he could have done it quicker. It's not really much of a fucking, if you can't get in contact with the guy, which I did try to do a couple of times. But the problem was that with that whole situation, the whole level of ridiculous as it was that after, he was here and I was moving stuff across, taking ages, and he was still trying to get me to work on it. He still seemed to think, in some bizarre delusional way, that I was going to help him. I was going to finish the movie. I was like, You've threatened to sue me, which you have no fucking basis on. You're just throwing it around like a moron, because that's what he is, and just deciding, oh yeah, that's fine. Like, that's like stabbing a person and then saying, can I borrow 20 quid? It's not gonna happen. So he stood here trying to guilt trip me into doing it, which of course, once again, stubborn asshole. That didn't work. Because at one point he was saying, like, oh, I was being very sneaky because I only worked for I only did my hours and then I stopped, which is one, not true. I worked far past my hours. I worked about double the amount of hours I was supposed to work on it for university. And I kept working on it because I thought maybe if I kept working on it, he'd listen. Maybe he'd see. Maybe he'd understand. Of course, I was wrong because his head is so far up his ass, he was looking out his neck. That's how wrong I was. And that was the issue. And so basically, I should have just deleted the fucking movie at that point. I really should have. It should have been a moment of like, no, go fuck yourself. You can start all over again. You have burned this bridge. The fact you've burnt it and then are trying to cross it as it burns is an impressive ability. Because unless you are Colossus or the Human Torch, I don't see you making that feat. And that was the fucking thing, you know. I should have deleted that fucking movie. Should have delayed its inevitable existence into the world. It's a terrible movie, and no matter, I fear for whatever poor bastards in about an hour and 20 minutes are going to be watching that movie, because it comes out at 6 o'clock today at a cinema in Rochdale, and it's going to be awful. And the funny thing is that the tutor I spoke to at my university said that it's likely that both the cinema nearest me, where he originally showed the movie, and the university were never going to show one of his movies again without like having watched it. That's how bad it was. It wasn't just, oh, it's a bit iffy. This was straight up awful movie that nobody will see and nobody should ever see. And those who do, and the people who will say to him that he's really good and he should keep going, are fucking idiots. Because if someone doesn't learn, if you don't say that if someone is bad and they don't try and improve, they're going to keep making shit. Every time I get a bad YouTube comment, I do read them. I don't just delete them. I do delete them though, but I read them. And if it's not something that where there's an issue, like I've had some people just act like assholes, I just get rid of them. But if it's somewhere where someone said, oh, well, this was an issue, so I go, oh, shit, right. And I go back and look at it and try and fix. Some of my early videos had terrible audio. Somebody told me they had terrible audio. I went, okay, I'll fix it. And I did. Now my audio sounds marvellous. You know, in the Let's Plays of Transistor that I've been doing and finished off this week, Wednesday, the microphone used to pick up my laptop, which is what I would record the audio on, because it was so close. So on the last view, I moved the laptop away to a much further distance away, and you couldn't hear that sound. You could only hear me, and that was better. You can only fix stuff. You can only improve with criticism. If you were critical of other people's work, it helps. That's what people should learn. If I have friends who've told me they didn't like something that I've done, I go, okay, what was wrong with it? And I listen and I find out. I have one person who was watching my videos, said some of my humor's predictable. And I went, yeah, it is. And it's an unfortunate problem, and I should try, and I'm trying to do better with it. And that's the issue. I understand this. I understand this thought. But this guy didn't. And going on, he has a Facebook page for his company, which isn't a company anymore, but he still trades as if it is. And you just see these people fawning over his stuff. These few people, obviously his friends, said oh, it's so wonderful, and I enjoyed your last film so much, blah, 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 blah. I was like, you obviously either have no taste, or you just wish to keep lying to this guy. And that's the problem. This guy is never going to learn. He is never going to realise why his movies suck, and he's never going to become anything bigger. The problem is, people see these movies, people will go, they'll see these movies, and they go, no, not ever again. Never. And by the time, and according to the tutor I spoke to that, he's very good at selling it. And that's the thing. If you're very good at selling it, yeah, that'll probably do how he does it. But I imagine the next movie he makes, which probably be for next year, will not come out in either the cinema he showed it in now or the cinema he showed it in the last one. Because no one will touch them. No one will want to touch them. Terrible, they're terrible movies. No one will do it. I wish I could make a movie and have it shown in both, so I could show up with a giant middle finger for it. That's what I wish to do. That'd be fun. That'd be wonderful. But I'm not much of a filmmaker. I'm a writer. I will always say that. I'm a writer, but I'm not at times a filmmaker. I try my best. But I'm trying to learn. I learn as I work. I keep going at it. But this guy, it's just, I never want to think that I'm like him. I never want to think anything I'm making is perfect, because as soon as you think something is perfect, as soon as you think you cannot do any better, that's when you're gonna fuck up. You're not gonna listen to other people. You're not gonna listen to yourself when you're questioning it. I question all of the stuff I'm writing, all the stuff I work on, all the stuff I create. I always think about it carefully. But the entire experience was just so tiring. Like, every time I had to go back to it, every time I had to work on something, there's a seduction scene in the movie that's barely a seduction scene, because the director, the writer director, the fucking main character, is making these ridiculously over the top faces that looks like the Big Bad Wolf in the Red Riding Hood cartoon, where she's at a dancer at a club. That old one, she's that sort of thing. And it's so ridiculous and cartoonish and unnecessary. Most of the movie is actually fucking unnecessary, but that's just a fact. But, and it bothers me. It all really does bother me that this guy is making movies and he's getting people doing stuff and he's getting it out there, and it's the thought that he's going to get a presence. And he's either going to get a presence, and he's getting a presence, he's appearing in the newspaper, he's been interviewed on the radio, and it's just like, this guy doesn't deserve this stuff. And I get, this is the part where I sound more bitter and jealous. And yeah, maybe I am to a degree. I get that. But there are better people who are working harder and taking their time and, getting stuff out there that's really impressive. But they're not getting this response. The only reason he's getting a response is because he's able to talk these people into doing stuff. And it's insulting. It was a terrible experience, and it was just. And funnily enough, I've actually just applied for a job as an editor on a short film sort of thing, and I am really kind of excited if I get that job. I'd be kind of sad, because I actually think that maybe this time they will listen, and they'll know what they're doing, and just everything will be so much better, because I will be able to compare it to this whole event, and I'll be able to say, at least it's not this. At least the people and the people in front of the camera are going to be good, and the camera work won't be shitty, and the fucking whole thing of the theme of it won't be stupid. And it's just, I can't believe that anybody is this delusional, but they are. He is. He just is. He doesn't see it. His script was basically like there's a sliver of dialogue. It's like one line for each scene. He had like 40, 50 of these scenes, and it's these bits that are supposed to all have this stuff happening, but there's nothing happening. And I'm pretty sure I'm winding down now slowly. I'm slowly getting to I've talked enough about it. But it's just madness. It's a terrible, terrible movie. And the fact that anybody's going to have to watch it and sit through it and then pretend it was good is insane. And that's the thing. The problem is, it's a cycle. He's going to make this movie. He's apparently making another one sometime soon. Apparently they're also making a documentary, but I've heard nothing about that one. Which I find interesting. And actually, what's interesting, on his Facebook page, they were advertising like, oh, we're looking for more like directors and writers and all this stuff. It's like, you don't even have an actual company. You are you, and the people doing half of the other camera work is the actors who are on set with you. That doesn't make me think you have a production company. That makes me think you are good at talking people into doing stuff they're no good at. Because one thing he did constantly was he left it on autofocus. He left the camera, so scenes began to go out of focus in the middle of takes. And it's just, I just don't even know. I mean, the thing is, I can bitch about it day in, day out. And I'm happy I can finally do this video. I'm happy I can finally talk about this. And I'm hoping, beyond hope, of one or two things are going to happen. One is that someone will finally tell him that his movie is shit. Somebody will finally do it. Somebody will watch it and they'll say, this is terrible. Or I just hope he stops. I either want him to make better movies or I want him to stop. I don't want to wish ill will on a person, but I also don't want shitty movies coming out from this area in the Northwest, and people looking at him and going and saying, holy shit, this is what they make in the Northwest. I mean, yeah, we've not had a great deal of stuff come out of here maybe in the last few years, but he certainly should not be the standard of which we end up getting held up by. What's more interesting is that his new movie, the one I was working on, it's oddly a charity event. Like, the tickets go up the tickets are free, but you donate to a charity. And there's about like 5 or 6 charities. So if, say, he made like £200 in total, between 5, each charity's gonna make 40 quid. Really. And so, he split it up between this huge amount, and I can't understand why. Unless he thinks that he could get more people to donate money. And you don't know how much of that money is going anywhere, so that's an interesting thought. Most of it might be going to his back pocket, which is what I imagine it will be. I don't trust him. And it's... the fact that he's a filmmaker is what bugs me. I don't like people who give bad names to things that I want to be part of. I don't like that. I don't like people who give bad names to the sort of like to anime and manga fandoms. I don't the ones who give bad to any of the sort of fandoms that I'm in a way a part of. Because whenever I see that, I'm just like, no, you are not. The unfortunate problem is that you are the one who people are going to see. You are the one who's going to be known. I really don't want that. I don't want anyone to see this guy's movies and go, oh, so this is what they're making in the Northwest. Ugh. I wish I could make a movie. I wish I could. I wish I had the skills or the time and the ability. I wish that I was more than just a writer when it comes to this stuff. But it's because that moment was just, that's the only thing I could probably do. I mean, I could write a script and say if it was a director, say, hey, well, you look at this. I don't know. And I've had ideas, but I don't write stuff that could be done easily. So I write cartoons, for fuck's sake. That's what I do. But it's just madness. If I ever get a way to look and find this movie and do it properly as a review, it's going to be interesting. I mean, I could put clips from it in. I could put clips, but it's not. There's a legality there where you can't. So. But it's just madness that this movie where the plot goes nowhere, everything ends, characters don't really seem to care about what's going on. That's just a bizarre thing. Like, no one has any action or motivation to this. No one has any reason to do why they're doing stuff. Or if they do, it's not explained. Or it's this very basic... You get it sometimes in movies. You get this idea where they, you go, oh, so this character's doing this. And you go, well, why are they doing this? It's like, and so someone tells you, oh, because it's like, no, but why are they doing this? I get that. I get they're going after the bad guy because the bad guy hurt their family, but why? They can prove they did it. They know the names and the faces. They can tell the cops with no problem whatsoever. Surely have the obvious evidence. It's the plot holes. The plot holes are huge. It just bothers me in that sort of way that this guy got someone, either he did it, he edited the rest of the movie, or we got some other poor fuck to do it, and whichever poor fuck had to do it, I deeply apologize, because you didn't need that. You didn't deserve to have to do that movie. But the movie's just awful. And if you go on Twitter, you can probably find it. You'll probably find me linking to the trailer for it, and then you won't be too difficult to look at with stuff. But the trailer just is bad. This bizarre tagline moment so destroyed by death, destroyed by fate. So destroyed by something of destiny destroyed by fate, and it's like it's the most pretentious fucking thing because nothing's destroyed by fate. Nothing is. Even all the sort of news articles I've seen, it's like there's one saying that the plot of the movie has these something happens to these 4 couples, and it's like, no, it doesn't. That happens to the 4 couples. Something happens to 2 couples. That's better. But it's the worst thing I've ever had to work on, and I would just say if you're going to work with somebody, in either director or as an editor, understand that you've got to have a dialogue. You've got to see the points that the person's going to make, and you have to be able to stay to your guns. And I get, that that's what he was doing. He was saying, he's got this vision. It's like, well, then why bring on an editor? Obviously, because he was saying, it's like cut there, and do this stuff. It's like, why don't you do it yourself? Because I'm pretty sure the only reason he was wanting me to do it is because he didn't have the time. And if you don't have the time to do it, then are you going to give it to somebody else? Expect them to do stuff with it. Expect them to change it. Expect them to try to make it better. Because any editor worth their salt is going to try and make a film better. They're going to try and fix some of the issues that maybe just that difficult and that only can be fixed in editing. But the film is shit. The film is probably always going to be the worst film I ever watch, because at least normally if you get a bad film, at least it has a narrative. Like Dragon Ball Evolution, there's a narrative there, and I can understand it, and I can understand the characters' goals and motivations. With Avatar: Last Airbender, it's the same thing. Some of the acting might be utter shit, but at least I can understand why. But the movie's just terrible. It's awful. It's crap. I'm annoyed that I ever had to do anything with it. And the only thing I'm glad about it is the fact that it gave me a thing to do for university, because otherwise I don't think I'd found anything. Because I couldn't do my show. Just by the fact that I'd have already done 60 minutes of my own show because I had to be somebody else, which was annoying, but still. So for now, I hope you've enjoyed listening to this, and I hope you've not minded me not looking at the camera because I'm trying to think. And if you want to try and find this movie, you probably can. Just look on Twitter, you'll find me talk about it. You'll find me bringing it up. You'll probably, if you look for, there was a hashtag I kept using called Edit From Hell. I think it was like Edit From Hell, and I kept using that to talk about what was going on and kept talking about the issues I was having. But other than that, I guess really that's it for now. I've finally got to talk about this piece of shit. I'm gonna go probably end up putting this up straight away once I've condensed it down, and that's it for now, and I'll see you soon with something. Don't know what, but interested to see what it is. It will probably be the My Name is Steve episode, because that's when that's supposed to be today. Not today. It's supposed to be a few days' time. But in about an hour's time, that movie will be released to a bunch of people, and I imagine it's going to end like the Ark of the Covenant. So, bad luck for those guys. There'll be some brain cells being rotted away in Rochdale tonight. So, bye-bye, people.